my name is Anne DeRousie. This is Adventureland Farm, and we raise beef cattle, Devon beef cattle. We've done many different things. We raised row crops like wheat and corn and oats and that sort of thing for many years on the extended acreage. And we raised pigs, and we raised Holstein dairy replacements, and then finally about 1980 we switched to beef cattle. First it was Angus cross cattle, and then in 1989 we bought our first Devon, and it's been a Devon herd ever since.
You have this kind of a rolling hills, a little mini mountain, so to speak, and you've got some Amish in this community, and there's a little wind. Tell us about this area in the climate.
We are in the middle of the Fingerlakes. We have Cayuga Lake to the east of us and Seneca Lake to the west of us. Those are the two long Finger Lakes if you look on a map. And we are about 1,000 feet from the top of the hill to the east. And so we get a lot of wind. But it's a very nice climate, not a lot of snow, and we love it. And we can sit on our front porch and look 40 miles into the distance over Seneca Lake and Cayuga Lake. We can't see the lakes, they're down in the dip, but we have a very long view here.
So it's very peaceful and quiet and gorgeous. This grass is lovely, which is my understanding is one of the things that Devons do well on. You have a grass-fed operation, is that correct?
That's correct. We don't raise a lot of beef ourselves. We raise the animals and sell them as young animals, and someone else finishes them. And we also sell breeding stock.
So tell me about how you got into Devons.
Well, that's one of those things that just sort of happens to you as you're walking through life. I happened to be in a dentist office one day reading a magazine about the American Minor Breeds Conservancy and all the different breeds of animals that they were trying to conserve, and I saw the Devons and they looked pretty neat, and I'm a historian, so they kind of drew my attention to them. And so in 1989 we bought our first Devon out in Massachusetts and brought her home, and soon after that we got two more. And that got us started with the Devons, and we really liked them. And so we started getting more and more Devons, and eventually there were no more Angus on the farm.
Now this kind of brings me to something that was a curiosity to me. We've done quite a bit with the American Milking Devon cattle here in the United States, but we haven't done a whole lot with beef Devons, and I've heard terms like beef Devons, red rubies, south Devons, northern Devons. Tell me the differences in those animals and the difference between an American Milking Devon and a beef Devon.
Okay. Well, to go back to the beginning, it's essentially the same breed. Milking Devons and beef Devons are basically the same breed, whose breeders disagreed at a certain point about the purpose of their animals and how they wanted them to be. And so there was a split, and there is Red Devon USA, which is the American Beef Devon Association, and the American Milking Devon Association, which are the Milking Devon Association in the United States. The American Milking Devon folks wanted their animals to be traditional Devons who did not excel at any one trait, but were very good at producing milk, beef, and as draft animals. The beef Devon breeders wanted to focus more on the beef production. And so that's the basic difference. It's been since the early to mid 1950s when this change started to take place. So while there are some very noticeable differences in the type of the two breeds of cattle, they still are really essentially one breed.
They were the same shared history for the first
Yes.
350 almost years.
Well, not only the first 350 years, but red cattle in Devonshire, England have been mentioned as far back as the Romans. So this was a very long-standing kind of indigenous breed of cattle there weren't really any such thing as breeds until about 1800, late 1700s, early 1800. Before that, it was just, there's the red cattle that live in Devonshire. It was just many times these animals were genetically isolated from other kinds of animals in other places in England or wherever, and they but they weren't breeds. It was only in the 1800s that people started forming breed associations and calling animals by breed names.
Is that the Bakewell influence? Or
Yes,
was it
yes,
yeah.
that's kind of when it started.
Yeah, he's a sheep guy, but what it really comes down to is I want this trait and I'm going to select for it and look for uniformity, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
so that's a really important component, but it does make it hard to trace. Now, we started talking earlier and we got into something else, but you are a history person. Tell me a little bit about your background in history.
Yeah, I have a doctorate in history, and mostly I studied social reform movements in the early 1800s. But being a farmer, I've also done quite a bit with agricultural topics, and so that's kind of how I got that. My interest in cows and my interest in history kind of come together.
So now this is what strikes me as sort of interesting about that previous sentence that we were talking about. Studying social reform, certain groups are underrepresented to some stance. I mean, women didn't get a lot of mention in certain parts of history. Mm-hmm. And in that same way, you look at, not to put women and cattle in the same category, but when you have something as a descriptor, when you're looking up history like 3 black cows and a red cow, or three heifers and a bull, it makes it really tough sometimes to get an exact analysis of what came and where.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's very difficult when you're looking at the early 1600s and the early Plymouth settlement to you. And this is not just true with this. It's true with everything in history. People like to say this happened at that date, and it's not always that simple. But we know that red cattle came with in the very early years of settlement, and by the time they split up the cattle and sheep herds to individuals, there was mention of red animals. So we know they were there, and sometimes the exact details are not that clear. Basically, what we know from the writings of the early pilgrims, and they weren't writing to inform us of what they were doing. They were writing for their own purposes. So we have to kind of dig in there and see if we can find some evidence for what we're interested in.
When it comes down to it, you have to do a little bit of guesswork and a little bit of an analysis to figure out, does this sound pretty much correct or not? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must be tough to work at a natural history or a living history museum because you're constantly maybe finding something out and you have to go reprint all the science, right?
Well, it's a lot of research.
Yes.
And genetics has gotten very interesting in its ability to help us ferret these things out. And it's really some fascinating things going on with genetics.
Okay, so you started with certain genetics. Go back to you and your farm. Mm-hmm. You started with certain genetics, and then you kind of moved in different directions, including bringing semen in from out of country, too. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of semen imported from New Zealand and Australia and other places. And the Devon breeders, the beef breeders, the Milking Devon folks they're pretty genetically isolated, and they do that very deliberately so that they can maintain those old genetics and prevent them from being influenced by other things. And the beef Devon folks do the same thing, but to a little different extent. We do use semen from other countries.
So, and I will get into the differences between the Milking Devons and the beef Devons, because I do think that's a really interesting component here. But I did want to ask that in the Devon universe, there's characteristics that make this an attractive animal, the beef Devon. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I wanted to ask what is it to you that makes a good-looking beef Devon, or a good behaviored, or a well-traded animal? Mm-hmm. I don't know how to say that.
Well, Devons are good mothers. They generally produce quite a bit of milk and grow a nice calf. They're very docile. Docility is one of their strong traits. They're very easy to handle. When we had our Angus were pretty calm too, because we do rotational grazing, which means we move them every day. So all the cattle we've ever had were calm, but the Devons were noticeably more docile than the Angus were. They can forage on lesser quality feeds than, I mean, if you compare a Devon to a Holstein, Holstein cattle need grain to survive, really. Devons will go out and eat just about anything. You still, you need to make sure they're getting the nutrition that they need, but their level of nutritional need is much lower than many other breeds of cattle. And we actually, I'll go to seminars and things, and they talk about how to keep your cows from losing weight in the fall so that they won't breed back. And our problem is keeping the cattle from getting too fat and being infertile. That's always been a problem. That's a problem here on this farm. Our grass is too rich for these animals, so we have to do things to make sure that they don't get the full benefit of what our grass has to offer.
Well, I get some of those very traits that you were talking about from an OSU article. It's on the Red Devon website if anybody wanted to find that one. But it did say one of the advantages is the docility and the fertility and the calving ease. It also said they're good walkers. I don't know what a rustler is. It said they're excellent rustlers.
Rustling means, there's not a whole lot of feed out there to be had, like if you're in a desert and, there's a cactus here and there. They're very good at wandering around and finding whatever vegetation is available.
So they will graze, they will rustle up feed, they will go to, if they're the same as the Milking Devon concept that I've heard of, they'll go and browse on branches and on scrub and all kinds of different things. And they'll walk to get it.
Yes. Yes.
And they say, and think about it, if you're looking for a beef animal, you do want something that has good muscle tone, so the walking thing is a big thing. And they were used quite a bit for oxen, so all the New England stacked walls that you see, probably a good chunk of those were from those little red cows.
Yeah, those Devon oxen were considered the racehorse of the cattle breeds. They're faster walking than most oxen are. They were, like if you were really into oxen, that would be your prize possession, would be a pair of Devon oxen.
Yeah, John Hall said that if you can keep up with a Devon all day behind a plow, you're an athlete.
Yes, yes.
So they have all of these characteristics, and they're also great on grass. And it says that OSU article said that this has impacted their popularity in places like Australia and New Zealand. Obviously, New Zealand's known for grass. And southern Brazil, which is a beef country. So they actually are successful in these great, beef countries, because Angus here in the United States has a great marketing campaign, and obviously you're going to be competing against that as the primary beef cattle. But if you can compete in southern Brazil with beef cattle, you actually have something to offer there.
Yes, yeah. The other thing about them is that they're very adaptable to different climates. In the early 1900s, in the United States, the Devon population was highest in the Gulf states, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. There were a lot of Devons there, and they're very well adapted to high temperatures. And they also are, very good in cold temperatures. Our cattle don't go indoors in the winter; they stay out all winter long. And we usually provide a shelter for the younger animals, and they generally don't use it.
That's something people take for granted, especially if you have a small farm. You don't want something that you have to constantly go maintain. And if it does have that elasticity to tolerances for weather, that's a huge benefit.
Oh, it is, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a difference between beef Devon, red rubies, and South Devon? Do you know?
Those are, I don't think that we've actually settled on that. Every country has their different way of saying it, and even in this country, You know, you can call them Devons, beef Devons, red Devons. That's all the same thing. South Devon is an entirely different breed.
But this is important actually because even though we associate the American Milking Devon with the United States, as a matter of almost, I want to say almost exclusively.
It is exclusively in the United States.
Yes. But the beef Devon, as we're going to find out in this conference coming up, has gone everywhere.
Yes.
It seems like.
Yeah, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, England, Uruguay, Mexico, Canada.
So there's quite a group here, and I could see how some of those terms might be things that sound very foreign here, but in England that's normal.
Yeah, red rubies is an English term mostly. They call them ruby reds or red rubies.
And we got a chance to go over there and see them, and Rick went and interviewed a farmer or two over there, and it was fascinating to see both the difference in the animal and the difference in the mindset and the sort of the conservation. I believe there's one woman who said that her grandmother, or her mom, I think, her mom milked and got great cream, you know, that Devonshire cream.
Oh yeah, the Devonshire cream.
Yeah, because that's one thing they were very much known for. So you, as a board member, you're on the board of directors currently,
Correct.
right? For Red Devon USA.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that organization here in the United States and why it was started and what you do.
The Devon Association started in the 1800s, and at that point it was all inclusive of all Devons in the United States. In later years it was the American Devon Cattle Association. It's been gone through some different changes over the years, and currently it's the Red Devon USA. But basically it's a breed association that's been ongoing since about 1860, I think.
So in the 50s there was a split between
Yes.
what people wanted to select for is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, that's basically was the disagreement.
Okay, and that was, it's my understanding, it was heavily impacted by the wars and production ramping up and the decision to say we need beef in this country.
Yeah, and changes, just changes in beef production in the United States in general, that, forced some Devon breeders to think, well, we have an animal that will produce really good beef and we need to concentrate on that because that's what everybody is doing and we need to compete there. And the folks that split off and became eventually the American Milking Devon Association did not want to sacrifice the dairy qualities and the draft qualities of these traditional Devon cattle in the effort to turn them all into beef cows. So that was kind of the difference between the two groups, and they kind of went their separate ways. And as I understand it, and I'm sure that other folks in the American Milking Devon Association have a better handle on that history than I do, but they were not able to maintain an association of their own until 1970 when it was revived. And the current Milking Devon cattle are from that period when they started the recording in their registry.
Well, this is one of the things that I think is absolutely lovely about this idea. It does, you have a communication. Jeremy Ng is, I believe, the president right now of
Yes,
Red Devon,
USA.
and John Hall at the American Milking Devon Association. They're in communications, and they have friendly relations, and they work together. And sometimes they have a unified goal. They want Devons to survive, and they both have a different direction, but they work together.
And I think that I think, or maybe I think and hope that the 400th anniversary will, help to solidify that. I think that it's for the breed, I think having two separate associations with two separate goals in terms of the phenotype that they want to see in their animals and what they want their animals to do is a good thing. and it should stay that way. It should not be, there should really not be a union of the two, because they're two, I mean, it's been 50 to 70 years now, and there are some more differences in the two breeds than there were. I kind of hate to call them two breeds, because honestly, my sense is that they're really one breed that have been managed very differently in the last 50 years.
You got calves for us.
Yep. Hi, girls.
So you stop having your cows have calves at 12-ish then, maybe, or 10?
It just depends. 12 to 14, I would say. Some are older. Occasionally we'll have one that, like Abby was 18. But when they get to be 14, you start to ask yourself every year, should I breed her again?
Yeah, because it's a safety issue. But they are cattle that just like to do their own thing and drop their calves where they need to.
Yeah.
Because I know some need a little more assistance.
Not a lot of assistance. Last year, not this crop of calves, but last crop of calves, I never saw a single one of them born. Yeah. I got out there and they were standing up nursing.
Yep. Yeah, that's what you want, is it not?
That's absolutely what you want. Yep. Yep.
So the mass with these are beef Devons. So
yes.
How old are they when you decide that they go find a home at freezer camp?
Usually about somewhere around 27 months.
Okay.
Yep.
So how does that compare to other beef cattle breeds?
Well, an Angus calf at about 10 months of age will be put in a feedlot. Some people brag about having them finished at a year of age. And I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, that's like eating veal. I like a little age on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're 12 to 15 months of age. They, market them out of a commercial feedlot.
Well, there's a lot of people that might say, oh, well, faster is better, bigger, stronger, faster, etc. But I had heard from, gosh, I forgot who said it now, but he was saying that if you think about cows or cattle in general, or any animal that finishes slower, if all they do all day long is run around and intake nutrients, it deposits in their flesh and their bones. I mean, sounds kind of gross, but that's kind of the reality of it. It deposits in their bones and their flesh. The longer that cow stays on a pasture, the more likely it is that the product of that animal is going to make its way to you, right? If they're not very old, it's less nutritionally dense, I would think.
Yeah. I always like to say, you could build your house out of willow wood or oak wood. Which would you prefer?
Yeah.
The willow grows really fast, but it's not very strong.
Yes. Yes, and I would think that, especially with beef, that's very much the case, where it's just, you want more nutrition in the animal that you're going to eat, because then again, it does make its way to you.
And we do emphasize growth. We want animals that are nice and growthy and grow fast on a grass-based diet. But I don't consider it necessarily a good thing that the calves, are slaughtered at 15 months.
Yeah.
But
now, how old is this little one that we see nursing here? How old is that calf?
About 3 months old, I think.
Okay. So she's gonna.
They were born. The first calf was born March 10th. March, April, May, June. So that's not one of the oldest ones. So yeah, probably about 3 months.
Yeah. Are you pretty much all live covered with that big bull I see over there, or is it anytime you want new genetics, then you kind of bring them in?
Right now we're doing all our breeding with the bull.
Okay.
We used to use AI exclusively. We had a really good breeder for many years who retired, and after that it was difficult to get someone to do it. And I learned how to do it, but it gets kind of a catch-22, because you have to breed the cows in order to get good at it, and if you're not very good at it, you're going to end up with a bunch of open cows. So, the question is, well, how do I get my practice,
Yeah.